Editing is one of the most important skills that you can learn, and being able to literally create something from nothing and seeing the story come all together is an amazing feeling. However, when you're starting out, editing can be quite overwhelming. You probably have no idea where to start or what steps you need to take to edit an amazing video. Hi guys, my name is Jason, and a few years ago I was just like you. I was a complete beginner in videography, and when it comes to editing, I would get so lost in that stage. However, over the next 2 years, I managed to refine my editing workflow to a point where I can consistently meet my clients' deadlines while producing great looking videos. So that's why today I'm gonna share with you our step-by-step editing workflow so that you can stop feeling stuck, power through your editing process, and make amazing videos. So step 1 is to back up and organize your files. I have lost footages of my clients in the past because I have not backed them up, and we got in huge trouble with that. So I beg you, if there's one rule that you should remember from this video, it is to back up your footage. So we have an external hard drive whose purpose is to back up all the footage that we've shot. That hard drive is not used for editing. That hard drive is purely just used for backing up your footage. And when it comes to editing, the hard drives that you want to use are called SSDs, which looks like this. The reason why we use SSDs is because they run a lot faster than your normal external hard drives. We personally use the Samsung SSD because they're just so small and so easy to carry around. They're also one of the cheapest options out there available as well. Now let's move down to organization. This is such a vital step before you start editing because you want to organize your files. So as you can see here, we have the footage from a recent project we did with a bike brand. What you want to do first is to go into your SSD, and then you're going to create a folder of the name of your project. For the name of this project, we're going to name it Summon because that's the name of the company. And what we're going to do is to create 3 basic folders. So I'm going to name the first one footage, and then I'm going to name the second one audio. And I'm gonna name the third one project file. And what we're gonna do next is we're gonna put the footage into the footage file. Next, we got the audio folder where if you did interviews in your shoot or get any sound effects, this is where you put that in. So right here, we've conducted an interview with our subject in the shoot. So we're gonna put the audio folder right here. And lastly, we have the project file, which is where you're gonna put your editing project in. Step 2 is where we start our editing process. And in order to edit, you need an editing software. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're using Final Cut Pro or Premiere Pro or DaVinci, all of those works, all of them are good. So in terms of starting your edit, the first thing you gotta do is to create an editing file. So we use Final Cut Pro, so I'm just gonna open it up. And I'm gonna create a new library. And where I'm gonna put this new library is I'm gonna put it in the project file that I just created. And next, we're gonna import our footage and audio. So what I like to do next is to create 2 folders. They're called bins if you're using Premiere Pro. So here I'm gonna rename this folder to A-row. And then I'm gonna create a new folder, it's called B-row. So if you don't know what A-row is any footage that involves some sort of scenario where there's someone talking or there's audio. A-row is important because it forms the basis of your story. So if you watch Drive to Survive, you can see how the interviews play an important part in telling the story because it depicts the characters, it narrates the events, and lastly, it also provides context to the viewers. On the other hand, you got B-roll, which is probably one of the most used terms in the film industry. It's basically what we call supplementary footage. So what I'm gonna do next is to import my A-roll footage in, and then you're gonna also import your B-roll footage as well. So as you can see here, you got your A-roll footage, which is footage of my interview and the interview audio. And on the B-roll side, you got all these like beautiful looking shots. We're gonna use these beautiful looking B-roll shots to supplement the story told by the A-roll. So step number 3 is what we like to call finding your golden nuggets. This is the step where we review all our footage that we've shot and take out all the bits that we're gonna use in our main video. And what I'm gonna do first is to sync up the audio and the interview footage. And here we go. Voila. And what we're going to do is just put it down onto our timeline. So obviously not all projects include interviews, so if you don't have any interviews in your shot, you can skip straight to reviewing your B-roll. So in any editing software, it's important that you learn how to cut clips quickly. So in Final Cut Pro is Control B, like you can see here. I'm just cutting clips really quickly. So we would review the entire interview and start cutting usable bits and deleting the parts where the talent makes a mistake or there's no substantial content. When I hear something really good in the interview, I'm gonna mark the clip so that I can remember to use it in the final video. So after the process is done, you can see that the 40-minute interview is cut down to 6 minutes of usable content. I've also marked out the golden nuggets which I could use in the final video. I then repeat this process with my B-roll footage so that we could find the golden nuggets that we could use in the final video. And here we're just cutting out parts of the B-roll clips which are usable for the final video and deleting all the unusable bits. So once we've gotten our golden nuggets from our A-roll and B-roll, we can start piecing the final video together. So step 4 is that you can finally build your story. So what I'm going to do right here is to create a project file named main video. I then go into my A-roll project file and select the clips which have been marked as really good and copy and paste them into my main video timeline. So for many beginner filmmakers, this may be the part that they struggle the most in. So here's an important point to remember. And it's that the more preparation you do before your shoot, the easier your editing becomes. So for example, prior to the shoot, I've already prepared a pre-production document that sets out the story that I want to tell in 4 stages. So you got the character's childhood and struggles with mental health, finding cycling as a coping mechanism, finding happiness supporting her husband's professional and cycling careers, and then her future, dreams and aspirations. So that when it comes to editing, I already have a very clear structure on how I'm gonna tell the story. And this principle also applies even if your shoot doesn't have an interview or A-roll aspect to them. For example, if you're shooting a promo video or a commercial that doesn't have an audio aspect, it's still beneficial for you to prepare a detailed storyboard of the story that you're gonna tell so that when it comes to editing, it will be so much easier for you. So if you're interested in learning more about our storytelling process, you can check out our video which details step by step on how we storytell and how we prepare our storyboard for each shoot. I'll leave the link to the video in the description box down below so that you can check it out. And step 5 is to create a feeling within your videos. As an editor, one of our biggest job is to storytell, and the way to do that is to evoke emotions within our viewers. Do we want them to feel inspired when watching the video, or do we want them to feel sad, or perhaps happy, or relaxed? These are the things that you need to decide as an editor. And the primary way that we want to go about this is to choose the right music that suits the emotion that you want to create within the viewers. For example, the starting sequence is quite sad. The character talks about her difficult childhood and her struggles with the mental health.
When I did decide to cut out my mum, I was suicidal. I felt so guilty for basically having to be like, I could just stop steering and go into the truck, or it just ended like.
But when she starts talking about her future and how she found happiness supporting her husband, the music changes to a more inspirational track.
Full-time support in the sense of cooking, cleaning, any flights that get changed, and I'm basically an EA all the time, 24/7.
Now you might ask, where do we get our music from? Well, we get them from a site called MusicBed. They are a music licensing site which we've been using for the past 2 years, and we absolutely love them because all their songs are great. Some alternative sites that are also great is Epidemic Sound and Artlist. Now once you've chosen your songs, I recommend putting them into a music subfolder which you will create in your project folder. Then you just drag the song onto your timeline. If there's specific bits of the song that you want to use, you can mark it and drag it around to where you want. For example, for this project, I want the climax to the song to hit as the camera is panning up to show the long concrete path as the character cycles away into the distance. The next piece of the story is created when you add your B-roll into your main timeline. Now we like to see this as show and tell. The A-roll tells the story through its audio component, while the B-roll shows the story through its visual component. For example, take this specific sequence where the character is talking about her difficult childhood in the A-roll, and we have B-roll of her looking out in the ocean crying. Combining both the A-roll and the B-roll together makes the story more compelling. In terms of integrating the B-roll clips into the main video, we go onto our B-roll file, select all the clips that have been marked as really good and copy and paste them at the end of our video timeline. The reason why I do this is that I could watch through the B-roll and drag the relevant B-roll clips which I think would best tell the story over the top of the timeline.
The reality of it is, I lost my mum at a very young age. She didn't pass away, but she was going through a lot of mental health issues and physical issues, and she ended up taking it out and becoming quite abusive to myself and to my family. When I did decide to cut out my mum, I was suicidal. I felt so guilty for basically having to be like, I can't deal with this anymore, and it would be easier for me just to slip away. There's been multiple times I was riding my bike and I've just gone, I could just stop steering and go into the truck or just end it.
Step 7 is color grading, and this part is very exciting because you get to elevate your visual storytelling by making the footage look as good as possible. I think one of the biggest misconceptions with color grading is that all you need to do is to slap on a lot and it will look good. But what a lot of beginner filmmakers don't understand is that color grading is a two-step process. Number 1 is color correction. Is your footage exposed correctly? If it's overexposed, what you need to do is to really bring the highlights or the midtones down so that it becomes perfectly exposed. Another aspect of color correction is white balance. If your footage is not white balanced correctly, you need to correct it in this stage. And it is after you finish with your color correction and then you can get on with the grading of your footage. Now, here's what we normally do with our footage. Firstly, we'll drag an adjustment layer over the footage that we want to color grade. And then we'll bring in a conversion LUT which converts the S-Log footage to Rec 709. After that, we'll do a bit of color correction, which is adjusting the midtones, the highlights, and the shadows. If the white balance doesn't look right in the footage, we'll also correct that as well. After all of that is done, we're gonna then apply our LUTs. For this project, we're gonna apply the Danigovitz LUTs for the cinematic look, and we're then gonna adjust the intensity to suit the image. Now step 8 is to add any text or logos that could help elevate the video. Now I don't know about you, but the best way I could tell from an amateur filmmaker and a really good filmmaker is the typography that they use in their video. For example, when I see amazing typography at the start of the video, I know that this video is gonna be really good. Now, great typography can often elevate your edit, and one of the most common fonts that we like to use is Montserrat. We like this font because it has several different variations, and this font is used quite common in the commercial world. One tip that I would love to give in terms of titles and logos is not to make them too big because they can give off a very amateurish look in your video. If you want to take it to the next level, learn how to do animations. But for starters, one of the easiest animations you could do is to use your pre-baked effects in your editing software. So for example, in Final Cut Pro, we have something called Cross Dissolve that we could use for both titles and graphics. When you become more advanced in this area, you can gradually progress to more complex animations by using After Effects. Now step number 8 is sound design. Similar to great typography, sound design is what brings your scenes to life. Otherwise, it's just a pretty looking montage. great sound design can really elevate your videos. You can source sound designs from various sources. The easiest is in-camera. If you do want to do that, I do recommend you getting a shotgun mic that you put on top of your camera. That way you're getting a lot better sound quality than the inbuilt camera mic. However, some sound effects are difficult to record with your camera audio. This is where using a sound effects library comes in. What's good about Final Cut Pro is they already have inbuilt sound effects that you can use. Alternatively, you can find sound effects on Epidemic Sound. So remember, incorporate sound design as much as you can in your video, because doing that will really elevate your video to the next level. And finally, the last step is export. If you want to export your video in 4K, make sure your project file is in the correct resolution. For Final Cut Pro, you click on the square with the arrow on the top right and you go to Master File. Go to Setting to make sure it's at its highest resolution and select Next. We then save the exported video in a new subfolder titled Exports. And there you have it. That's our 10-step process to editing videos. As a beginner filmmaker, it's unrealistic for you to master each step of the process straight away. So go out and film, practice, and spend time improving your editing so that you can become a better editor. Because now you know the roadmap. You know each of the steps it takes to edit an amazing video, and you're gonna spend hours mastering your craft. Don't be like those standard stock videographers who just slap on a catchy song on some cool looking B-roll, because you're different. Learn these 10 steps and you will differentiate yourself from them. Because as Steve Jobs said, the most important person in the world is the storyteller. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you guys want to know more about how Jono and I went from complete beginners to full-time filmmakers, please sign up to our newsletter, description in the link down below. In our newsletter, we go deep and share all aspects of our journey, specific steps, insights, personal stories, and struggles. If you have any comments or questions, please let us know in the comment section down below. Once again, thank you so much for watching and see you all next time.